You're listening to Scoot Closer, brought to you by Resting Rageface Media. Welcome to Scoot Closer. I'm Shweta.
I'm Ankita, and we are sisters.
We are, and Scoot Closer is our show that centers on women's health issues and the gaps that we see in our care and emerging research in the space. So if you're joining us for the first time, if you're family or friend, thank you for accepting the invitation. That's really what Scoot Closer is all about. It's about accepting the invitation to join the conversation on women's health issues, which we are both very nosy and very passionate about. I'll share first why we're doing this, because it seems like everybody these days has a podcast.
Yeah, but you know what? I heard somewhere that podcasts are like the tramp stamp. Like everyone has one. And neither you or I have a tramp stamp. So we're just going to go all in.
No tramp stamps.
Yay.
But look at us, we made a podcast. You know, one of the reasons why this has been an exciting passion project for both of us is because, frankly, I think I sit around a lot thinking about my experiences specific to women's health. I've gone through several rounds of birth control for different reasons. I've gone through an egg freezing cycle. I've had different, stories that I've heard from even my friends going through their own experiences. And sometimes these things make me spin out in rage and a little bit of despair because I feel so acutely all of the disparities in our health care today and the lack of information we have going into different stages of our lives, and even just the lack of resources and access and research. And I think Ankita and I spent a lot of time just calling each other up being like, did you hear about this insane thing? It's really pissing me off. And we wanted to apply that rage a little bit more productively and do something about it so that we were arming ourselves and the people in our network with more information so that you can go out and advocate for yourself and learn what's happening out there and maybe use that productive rage to feel inspired for the future. So that's part of the reason I really wanted to start this with Ankita. And, Ankita, tell everyone about yourself.
I think you hit the nail on the head with advocacy and community. Those are really the big reasons why we wanted to start this podcast and this conversation. So Shweta talked a little bit about her health journey. I have had my own with 3 pregnancies. I have an angel baby. That was my first pregnancy. And I have 2 living children outside of that. And it's been a long few years, honestly, of advocating for myself, of navigating this system. And I feel stressed and thankful that I have the community that I do. But it's been tough. My first pregnancy ended because of chorioamniocentesis. Say that 5 times fast. It's also colloquially known as chorio. And essentially it's an infection in the womb. My, second pregnancy, my baby was growth restricted and I had a retained placenta after that. And then for my third pregnancy, I was just really sick the entire pregnancy, just kind of on meds for my nausea and things. And then I had postpartum preeclampsia. And every step of the way, I was advocating for myself. I was learning something new. I had to find resources and doctors that would help me along the way. And I think it felt tough. I am thankful for the communities that I have built along the way. I truly think that social media, and I understand that it comes with its downsides as well, but I do think that social media has amplified and expanded our stories. They make our communities and our stories bigger and they make them go farther. And I just want all of us to come out of this feeling like we're not alone, we're not isolated. We can have these conversations together. We can advocate and inspire each other together.
I think you said it so well, and it's kind of crazy to just hear you list everything off because that happened in the span of
4 or 5 years, maybe.
It's wild. But, I'm sure that it's not an unfamiliar thing. One of the things we've learned is how frequently all of these things happen to people, but we leave them unsaid. And so I love your point about amplifying because I do think that's what we want to do here. We bought mics so that we could do that. But What do you want other people who are listening to get out of this podcast?
For me, what I want the audience to get out of this podcast is really to walk away with what type of research is out there, what type of bleeding research is out there, what are things that...
I think you meant like leading edge.
Am I
Did
saying...
you actually... You said bleeding.
Is it not bleeding edge?
It's not. I don't think it's bleeding edge. I think it's like the leading edge. But you know what?
It could
you can
be
reclaim it and call it bleeding edge. In the context of this podcast, it might as well be. So.
I don't know if it's bleeding edge or leading edge, but you know what? We want somebody listening to this podcast and saying, "Oh my gosh, that's a great tool. That's a great research study that's happening. That's a great drug that hasn't been approved yet. I want to invest in it. I want to see where this could go." That would be my inspiration, that we inspire young listeners to enter the field or to keep going if they're feeling like they don't have the gas in their tank, and just know that this is important. Women's health is just human health, and it gets sidelined quite a bit. And I think it's important to have this conversation.
Well said. And actually, this is a perfect transition, because if we're going to start talking about, what are the areas that are underfunded and under-researched and what we want to feature on this podcast, I think we actually need to couch it in some data. And what people might learn throughout this series is that Ankita is definitely more of a science nerd. Like, she can talk to you about biology and chemistry and all those things in ways that I definitely can't. I will probably be more of the numbers nerd, because I really love just getting that data in front of me to contextualize what is going on. So I want to talk a little bit about what's going on today in research funding. Many of you might already know that in January, President Trump signed an executive order. And in that order, they were mandating the termination of DEI programs and any related language from federal agencies. So what does that mean for health? The National Institute of Health, which is a federal agency, has reportedly canceled several of their active research grants that are related to LGBTQ plus issues, gender identity, and other specific DEI studies. So there are federal agencies, including the National Science Foundation, who are starting to now use algorithms to flag specific terms that pop up in their searches, such as, get a load of this, equity, trauma, women, and female. So if terms like that start to show up in their algorithm, the projects using those terms are going to be subject to additional scrutiny. They might get terminated and stopped altogether, so that all these agencies can demonstrate that they're compliant with the executive order and that they don't lose their overall funding. I need to take a breath, because that
makes me sick.
It makes me sick. I don't know if people are talking about it, because frankly, I think we're all maybe overloaded with news these days anyways. But this is important. It's going to have years-long effects on research to stall the progress that we're making today.
And it's not just in the women's health space. We acknowledge that this has happened with cancer research. This has happened with all different types of research, right? But the fact that these words are being flagged for extra scrutiny, the word woman, 50% female, 50% of the birthing population, women's health is important. It's necessary for human health.
Yeah. I want to talk about this a little bit more, because I think we all anecdotally have felt in our lives that there isn't enough research, but maybe we don't have the data to show, point to it and say, no, actually, we haven't been investing in this place historically. I just know because anytime I'm asking a doctor about something, they're saying, well, have you considered just coming back in 6 months and seeing if the problem still persists? So often I think our bodies are just little science experiments, because there's not enough data and research about how to get to the bottom of an issue you're experiencing.
Turn it off and turn it back on.
Yeah. Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on?
It's the equivalent of that.
I was on a certain birth control implant to manage my pain, and I was experiencing bleeding for 8 months straight.
Oh my God.
I went to the doctor and I asked them for help, and they said, "Are you stressed?" I was like, maybe I'm stressed because I'm bleeding.
Bitch, are you serious?
Yeah. And I was like, it was almost like this amazing gaslighting, because I was like, you know what? It is my fault. I'm stressed. It's not the birth control. I
So
need to
let
go
me just zen
I need to
out
go
and
manage
my
my stress.
bleeding will stop.
Exactly. I need to like change my job. I need to go do something else because
Yeah.
clearly it's me doing this to my body. So I think we have all felt it anecdotally, but really quickly, I want to drop a little bit more math.
Give me them. Give me
and
them
history on you.
numbers.
So, in a recent report by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, they revealed that from 2013 to 2023, only 8.8% of the NIH research spending was targeting women's health. And at that time, the NIH budget was overall increasing, and that portion of women's health research was just steadily decreasing over that same period. And I do want to, I don't want to conflate these numbers. So the 8.8 doesn't mean that the other 91% is all men's health. That's not how it works. The remaining percentage, in reality, there's no men's health category. And doesn't that just tell you everything you need to know?
Yep.
Their health is just considered health. They don't have a specific category. But if you want to go down this rabbit hole with us, and I won't bore anyone with any more numbers, but if you want to go down this rabbit hole where you can start to learn about the disparities, if you look at specific diseases like cardiovascular, Alzheimer's, prostate and breast cancer, if you dig deeper, you will see that the women's perspective in these diseases and their treatments are vastly underfunded and under-researched. And you see that pop up because the test subjects might be male. The treatments themselves are tested on male populations and then just kind of applied as results that should be applicable to the whole population. And then when we see adverse effects, we're just kind of scratching our heads like, well, I don't know, it worked for him. So our default setting is set to men.
Say it again.
Our default setting is set to men. What is that? What is that? I mean, literally, okay, so, Ankita and I were talking about this because I used to work in engineering. I used to work in, building design. And you have these handbooks that tell you, like, this is the standard room temperature that you must set the machinery at in this office building. And, when you get advice on the internet around the hours of sleep, 8 hours of sleep a day, 2,000 calories a day, 10,000 steps a day, these defaults are based off of male bodies. I know for a fact that the temperature standards that I was following as an engineer were for male bodies. Haven't you ever sat in an office building and gone, like, as a woman, you're probably like grabbing a shawl, grabbing a sweater because it's cold? It's not in your head. The default setting in a lot of aspects of our daily lives are set to men. And part of this is because we do not fund and research and learn about the effect of daily life on women. And we're starting to see more of that. There's more research out there. And I think we really want to use this podcast as the place where we talk about that. So if you are like us and you're feeling any rage whatsoever from what you just heard, welcome to Scoot Closer. It's time to lock in and join the conversation.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's dive into our topic for today. And Ankita, I think you're going to drop some knowledge on me about some research you've been doing. So lay it out.
Okay. I'm really going to try my hardest not to make this sound like a book report. So please just stop me if I start getting a little too pedantic.
We'll know when we see the drop-off rates of people listening to the podcast.
Yeah, they'll say, whoop, book report, goodbye. Yeah. Okay, so the human body has over 50 hormones, which are responsible. Alert. Yes, I know. I started off with the human body. It just wasn't great.
Like, how deep is this going to go?
It's deep. We're learning about every single hormone ever made.
Should I convert my standing desk back to a sitting desk?
Yes, please. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. Okay, so we have over 50 hormones in the human body. They're responsible for things like reproduction, metabolism, mood, growth, a variety of things. And today we really want to talk about prolactin, which is the primary hormone responsible for breastfeeding. So prolactin has a baseline in your body at all times. Men, women, we all have it. And during pregnancy...
I have a crazy question.
Yeah.
Does that mean that,
men can lactate?
Men can lactate.
Yes.
So because they have that hormone, they could be lactating right now.
I have stories of people...
Men lactating?
That have sympathy lactated.
When you say stories, are you talking about personal stories, aka
No.
the person you're married to?
No. Oh my God, please don't put that on him. Poor guy. Not him. But I know of a few people. I've heard stories.
I mean,
People.
honestly, you know what? For those people, those men that lactated, good for you. Okay. Good for you. This
Welcome.
podcast is for you too. Yeah. Scoot closer.
Hey, scoot closer, lock
Okay.
in.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Go on.
Um,
Prolactin.
yeah, so prolactin, we all have a baseline of prolactin, and men and women, all of us, like I just said. But we don't lactate because progesterone and a bunch of other hormones keep it in check. So during pregnancy, our prolactin levels are rising above our baseline. Post delivery, so right after you've given birth, your prolactin levels have increased, and your progesterone and estrogen, they naturally drop to help your body support lactation and so that you can start lactation. Lactation and milk production is a hormonal response for the first few days, but then it switches somewhere between 2 to 6 weeks. And of course, it's dependent on your
That's a
body.
huge range.
Huge range. I'm sure it hasn't necessarily been studied, but somewhere in the 2 to 6 period post pregnancy is when it switches to supply and demand. So what that means is prolactin increases in your body through nipple stimulation, which is why women are encouraged to breastfeed on demand or pump on demand if they want to continue their lactation journey. The more you pump, the more you stimulate your nipples, the more prolactin is in your bloodstream, and your body is then signaled to create more milk. We want to stop here, and we want to do a quick side note. We've been on these health journeys. We are completely and 100% on the stance of fed is best. Your mental health, your physical health as a parent are way more important than anything else. Fed is best. Fed is best.
It's very interesting because I know you and the process you have been through your multiple pregnancies.
Yes.
For you to also be able to say that so with so much conviction now, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think that you treated yourself with that same mantra when you were breastfeeding, and I watched you go through like very painful experience of struggling with supply. I cannot imagine how hard and stressful it is when you're already like so sleep deprived in those early months and doing something
Your
for the first
body's
time.
been through it. You've been pregnant for the last 9 months. You've pushed a baby out, and now
Totally.
you're figuring out how to manage that. I mean, I had a lot more perspective by baby number 3 on what breastfeeding was going to look like, and
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I had that. After Angel Baby, because I had delivered, I was about to lactate, and we did everything that we could to stop me from lactating. Cabbage leaves, for anyone that's interested in that.
Isn't that crazy? Cabbage
I
leaves.
believe actually there is now a drug that prevents you from lactating.
Wow.
It wasn't present when I was going through what I went through with my Angel Baby, but it is available now, from my understanding, of like something that stops you from lactating.
And this is why we fund women's health research, so that we're not in a hospital trying to help a parent who's gone through child loss by stuffing cabbage into their shirt.
As
It's
they're
just not the way.
crying.
As they're crying. It's just not the way. But no, I'm glad you're saying fed is best. Like that is absolutely how we think about this. So this is not some sort of episode about how you can breastfeed more. That's actually not the point. We're going to tell you why we're talking about what we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. Formula is wonderful. If you can get your hands on breast milk, that's wonderful. But your baby being fed, your baby being happy and healthy are the most important things. And we always want to keep that in mind. Okay. Going back to prolactin. So we talked about how when you're lactating, you have an increase of prolactin in your body. What that also does is it suppresses other hormones like progesterone and estrogen, which actually usually stops you from ovulating, which means that you stop having a period. So it's kind of Mother Nature's way of like saying, you've got your hands full, you've just had a baby, no more kids right now. But that doesn't mean that your body can't always ovulate.
Yeah.
This is why we have surprise pregnancies. So while that is the correlation, that's not always true.
Good disclaimer.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about just fed is best, and we talked about prolactin being in your body and producing milk. Imagine now that there is a natural disaster. Something that happened in Pakistan a few years ago where there was flooding, and I believe 30 to 40% of the country was flooded at the time. There's no access to clean water for formula at this time. You don't have access to clean bottles. I don't know if you can boil the water to then
If you
put
have
formula in
access to
there.
an energy source to even boil it, right? Like
Yes.
you need so many elements for that to work in a safe way.
Think about the fires that just happened in California. People
Yeah.
were abandoned from their homes. And granted, maybe the infrastructure allowed folks to go to their families' homes or go to a hotel or something. But again, during these natural disasters, we don't always have access to water, energy, clean sources for infants, for newborns. Back in 2022, we also had a formula shortage. That was one of the catalysts for why a few European formulas were then approved through the FDA for consumption in the US. So what do we do during these times when you as a lactating parent are not producing enough milk? You're in a natural disaster. You're in a situation that's really tough, and all the pumping and the feeding is not working because your body isn't necessarily responding in the correct way. And that happens. That happens quite frequently. Enter prolactin XL. There is a research study that is currently being conducted at the Weiss Institute at Harvard. Essentially, it is a long-lasting injectable. So it is an injectable. It increases the size of prolactin, and it also increases the half-life of prolactin in your body. So I'll pause here and I'll just say this is a research study. Nothing is FDA approved. This has been studied in mice and not humans. So, again, this is leading/bleeding edge research. But
We should
it's
call the
something
podcast Bleeding Edge.
maybe we should have. Okay, so like I mentioned, this is not something that is on the market currently. It is a research study that's happening. And actually, before we keep going, I'd love to kind of pause again and do a quick small lesson, the tiniest.
This is like a nested doll. It's like a lesson within a lesson.
I'm sorry. I don't know how else
That's
to do
okay.
this.
No, that's okay. I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn so that I can be appropriately pissed off.
Perfect. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about drug manufacturing terms. In the drug manufacturing world, hormones can sometimes be called proteins or steroids. Proteins are things like prolactin, insulin, and steroids are things like cortisol or estrogen. Proteins are amino acid-based molecules, and steroid hormones are fat-based molecules. So that's just kind of what we want to know. And the reason why this is important will become familiar in just a second here. But prolactin is referred to as a protein. And what prolactin XL did is it increased the size of the protein, or increased the size of the molecule, so that its half-life has increased, and the way that we are excreting it through our body is different. So regular prolactin is excreted through our urine. Our kidneys process it and it goes out our pee. Prolactin XL is processed through your liver, and so it goes out your stomach and your large intestine. And essentially, you poop it out.
I want to ask you, actually, is it crazy that they enlarged the size of prolactin? Is that the bleeding edge of this?
No, it's not. Protein sizes are increased. It's common in drug manufacturing, which is why I wanted to take the pause and talk about how prolactin is treated as a protein. Increasing the size of a protein improves the efficacy, improves the stability, and improves the half-life of these products, these drugs, so that they can be more efficient in your body and they can be longer lasting. A few examples of these are GLP-1 drugs that are out for diabetes and how we're using them off-label for weight loss. Drugs for breast cancer, lymphoma, Hep C, MS. The list is long. And again, we want to clear it through your liver because it stays in your body longer that way. So back to prolactin, they've increased the protein size, they've made it bigger. And basically, what us increasing the prolactin size means that we have increased milk production during a time of emergency, during a time where formula is hard to come by, clean water is hard to come by, and allowing a parent to continue to feed their baby and not have that aspect be disrupted.
That's amazing. I mean, I didn't even think, until you first told me about this topic, I didn't even think about just the access to clean water, and how in the world do you keep infants alive when you are in these times of crisis? But like, why aren't we using prolactin XL or drugs like that now today at the first sign of distress? Like, why has it been hard to, see more research like this?
I think one of the biggest things is that women's health around this time, like, quickly postpartum, even during pregnancy, it's sensitive. It's a delicate time. You don't want to do any experimentation when you are birthing a child. So, that's why a lot of times you'll even see on regular products that you're using, it'll say consult your doctor if pregnant, because we just don't know what the impact could be on a child. So it is much harder to come by these. But they did do this study on mice. And one of the things that prolactin is designed to do is it breaks down easily in the stomach. What they don't want is for infants to be like pumped with prolactin, right? And so they tested on mice the bioavailability or the presence of prolactin in these infant mice. And in their stomachs, they did not find an increase of prolactin. So we know that it got broken down as it was ingested, which is great news, promising news. This is one of the things that we do fight as women's health, is just that it is a delicate, sensitive period where we do not want to disrupt the human life process. And so we end up in a situation where a lot of research just doesn't get done during this time period. There are, we'll dive into this in like other topics and stuff, but they don't really understand the placenta very much, but they don't really have a lot of different ways of studying it.
I mean, that's why there's so many different uses that people make of it too.
Yes,
but
exactly.
That's great to hear, though, that at least so far the studies are showing that you're not finding remnant hormonal levels in the infant mouse. But what's happening in the lactating parent's body when they're using this? So you're introducing this like mega protein into your body while your body is trying to, maybe struggling to produce the natural mini protein. Are they working hand in hand? Are they fighting? What's going on?
Introducing external prolactin into your body is going to cause your body to underproduce its natural prolactin. It is the signal of the pituitary gland, which is where prolactin is produced from. And if the pituitary gland senses that there is a lot of prolactin floating around, it is going to underproduce its natural prolactin. But again, it is not a long-term effect as far as we can tell, because you do eventually, once you stop injecting yourself with prolactin XL, you would eventually get it all out of your system, and then your body can go back to its natural response of whether it needs to lactate or not based on the prolactin that's in your bloodstream. We really want to highlight again that this is for emergency situations. This is how this study is being researched, and really is the purpose of what we're trying to solve. Is like, in an emergency situation, you want to have this medicine in your arsenal if there are lactating parents present who don't have access to certain things.
Okay, so it sounds like, it's not meant for long-term use, but that there might be some effects to having it in your body for too long. Is that right?
We have a delicate ecosystem in our bodies with our hormones, and any imbalance we already know can have a lasting impact on our body. So having too much prolactin in your body for a longer period of time, it can cause breast tissue to grow, which can lead to higher instances of breast cancer, and something called okay, let's go again. Hyperprolactinemia. Amina? Oh my gosh. Hyperprolactinemia. Amina.
Oh my God. Whoever knows how to pronounce that, please just, I don't know, find us and teach us. Yeah.
Hyperprolactinemia can cause infertility issues. It can cause mood disorders, weight gain, all of these things. So really, we want to always maintain our body's hormonal balance, and having too much of one or the other just causes havoc. So yeah, this is not meant for long-term use. It's what we talked about. It's meant for emergency use, at least the way that it is being researched right now, and the impacts that we see of a drug like this on the market. Because again, fed is best. This is not meant to replace your natural prolactin response. This is not meant to replace your mental or physical health for lactation purposes. This is meant to be used for emergencies, the way that we see the application of this bleeding edge drug right now.
Honestly, my mind's kind of blown from just so many different angles, because I just didn't think about what people might be experiencing in those situations that specifically when it comes to family care. And yeah, the risk of keeping, your infant alive when you don't have access to things like heat or clean water during times of crisis. The fact that there are basically no other FDA drugs approved today to solve this type of problem, whether it's for crisis or for people that just want to take something that is a helpful supplement or whatever, it just tells me how much this study, it's like single study that you found, is on the bleeding/leading edge of the problem. And it's a very nascent solution too, because they've only tested on mice. Who knows what, honestly, if they're clearly not using the word women, they're using lactating parent, thank goodness, for multiple reasons, but also maybe because they won't get flagged by the NFS or NIH algorithms. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
that's a little hack
the system. But also, I love that the term's more equitable. I guess I'm not allowed to say equitable, but there, I said it. What do we do with this? What do we do with this information? Because I'm not a scientist, you're not a scientist. Most of the people listening probably aren't. But where do we go from here?
Yeah, I think the point of our podcast is to just kind of nerd out on things that we're finding out. And we hope that this is inspiring to people. We hope that people are yes, we need to invest in these problems and these ideas. Unfortunately, climate disasters are not going anywhere. They're just going to keep on getting worse. And it really sucks that this is what we're talking about and how prolactin XL could potentially be used in those situations. But at the end of the day, that's where we are. And so, our call to action here, and really our takeaway that we want for listeners is hey, cool, you learned about something new. Let's just keep talking about all these new things. Let's figure out how we can invest in these research studies. We have a bunch of other topics that we want to talk about that are coming up, and we want to talk about how you can advocate for yourself to use different therapies, to use different tools in your examinations that allow for us to move away from the archaic system that we have always been a part of. It needs to start from somewhere. And we hope that this is a starting point for some people, for inspiration, for advocacy, for dissent, and hopefully some rage.
Perfect, as they say. I think I have no other words. If you're listening and you made it this far, thank you. Thank you for accepting the invitation to join this conversation. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
See ya.
We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions or inspiration that you would like to share, please reach out to us at hello@scootcloser.com.